Okay, good morning. Um, just to do a little backstory, we've been doing this for 4 years now, believe it or not. We started during the pandemic, and it was with a bunch of people from Nashville because we had to cancel a live big book workshop, and we started doing it on Zoom. And then somewhere along the line, it's got to be 2 years ago. One of the participants suggested we record this stuff, so we started recording them. And Buck, who's not on here this morning, did a website for us that's Wandering Through the Big Book, WTTBB.com. So on that website is this study guide that was the basis of doing the Big Book workshop. And so we have recorded. We started with session 33, went to 60 something, and then last year, a year ago, we started with number 1 and went through 20. So this is on the website. This will show up as session number 21, and I'm going to do a little bit of review, but then starting next week, we're going to go into reading the original manuscript of how it works, because it's slightly different than the what we see in the big book, and it's worth having a discussion about. So technically, we are on step 3. We've done step 1, which we defined here as the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, more about alcoholism, and there is a solution. Step 2 is we agnostics. We spent several different sessions on those, and so now we're at step 3. So we're calling this one 3 degrees of miracles, I think it was, body, mind, and spirit. And so what I want to use as a foundation is this page from the study guide. It's the last page of the introduction, and it's 3 columns that represent the physical aspect of our disease, the mental aspect, and the spiritual aspect. And then in each of the columns, we write down a name, we write down a symptom, we write down a treatment plan, and we write down promises of treatment. And then you'll see, if you've got this, in column 1, the physical aspect of the disease, the goal and or the outcome is sobriety. The mental part of the disease, the goal or outcome is sanity, and finally the spiritual part of the disease is serenity. And beneath that is a nice little formula of pause plus ask plus listen plus do equals serenity. And we've made the point before that the pause is step 10. The pause is when we step back a little bit from whatever difficult feeling that we're having, and we ask and we listen for what are we to do in this situation. And that's step 11. And then finally, the doing is carrying forth the guidance that we get in 11 into step 12, the action part of our program. So what I'm doing essentially today is trying to add a third thing, which we're calling a miracle of this particular phase. And I'm going to run through those now, but then go back through it again to try to make that point. So the first, in this interpretation of the book, the first level of a miracle inside the program is in the promises of the 10th step. As you know, there are promises for every step, and there are significant ones in 9 and 10 and 11 and 12, as well as 4 and 5. The 10th step promises are on page 85, and they essentially say that we recognize, after no matter what number of years we drank, we recognize at some point that we're not actually interested in drinking. That the way the book says it, the problem has been removed. I no longer feel like my drinking is the I no longer feel the tyranny of it. I no longer feel it's the driving centerpiece of my life. I'm not even thinking about it, and I feel like the problem just doesn't exist. And it refers to it as a miracle. I really should read it rather than trying to remember what it says. So just give me a moment here. This is page 85, the top of page 85. Starting at the bottom of 84, we react sanely and normally, and we find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. And what's so challenging for us in AA, I believe, is that we see this work um, in terms of our obsession with alcohol. And then all we need to do is apply it to whatever other problem we feel like we're experiencing in our life. That this happens because of this relationship and conscious contact that takes place at whatever level it takes place. And if you could apply this, whether it's to smoking or gambling or all of the other relationships, all of the other problems that tend to show up in our fellowship, it would work. That's the miracle. It just happens, and we recognize I can't take any credit for it. I can't claim I did this. I removed my obsession with alcohol. So that's the first level, and I'm going to come back to it, but that's as a result of treating the physical part of our disease. And on this worksheet, the treatment plan comes from Dr. Silkworth saying, you just can't take the first drink. That's the problem. You can't take the first drink. Our wanting to take the first drink is the mental part. It's mentally we want to take the first drink. Then physically we want to take the second drink. If we take the first drink because of our physical abnormality, normal reaction to alcohol is to drink one or two, maybe even 2.5. But most normal drinkers can't get through drink number 3 without some effort because the body tells them to stop. And we're different. And we don't understand their reaction to alcohol to stop any more than they understand our phenomenon of craving. You know, if you get with a normal drinker and you talk about drinking, they're not lining up the next drink before they've even finished the drink that they've got. They're not scouting the room to see where am I going to get the next drink. It doesn't, they can take it or leave it, is what Dr. Silkworth says. We don't understand that any more than they understand us saying, you know, I've got to have the next drink. I've got to find it and I'll do anything to get to it. It's a fundamental, it is the fundamental difference between us and normal drinkers and people who don't come to the fellowship. So so the second level of miracle, oddly enough, it shows up on page 50, which is right before 51, right before the bedevilments. So I'm giving you the conclusion of this whole deal at the beginning, and then we're going to go back through it more specifically. So page 50, the bottom paragraph, here are thousands of men and women worldly indeed. These are not monks and nuns. These are not people who have devoted their lives to God. They're in the world. They're business people, professional people, husbands and wives, parents and children, whatever. They flatly declare, they matter-of-factly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power, and to do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of thinking and of living and thinking. Now, my sponsor was a big book nut, and every time the book said something about take that certain attitude, he'd say, "What's that attitude?" I would say, "Honest, open, and willing, sir." I'm exaggerating, but that was the attitude. Honest, open, and willing. Honest about where I'm at. Open-minded about maybe there's a better way to do things, and willing to take certain actions that my ego does not want me to take. In the face of collapse, and then he would say, what about these certain simple things? And you will hear sometimes people refer to 5 things, that if I do these 5 things, on a daily basis, I never have to feel as bad as I felt the day I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. The 5 things are prayer in the morning. It starts as simply as, God, please keep me away from a drink or a drug today. And the prayer in the evening is, thank you, God, for whatever happened. It eventually becomes all the stuff that step 11 talks about in the morning on awakening. As we're considering our plans for the day, it talks about meditation, talks about all these different things. You can spend a good half hour in the morning if you're really following the directions of step 11. But in the beginning, God, please keep me away from a drink today. So that's the first thing. Last thing is, thank you, God, for whatever happened during that day. And the three in the middle are, read a couple of pages of the book. That can shift to spiritual literature, to readers, to whatever it is that you want to do. Have some one-on-one contact with another alcoholic, and go to a meeting of the fellowship, or a spiritual gathering that has as its basis this relationship with God thing. In the beginning, of course, it's AA. So 1, God, please keep me away from a drink or a drug today. 2, a couple of pages of of the big book. 3, go to a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. 4, have some one-on-one contact with another alcoholic. That's a vital part of our program. It's one-on-one. It's different than a group interaction. And 5, thank you, God, at the end of the day. So if we do those, if we try to have this certain attitude and we do these certain simple things, we recognize sooner or later that our life has changed dramatically. That what was important to us when we came into this fellowship is not what's important to us now. And so in the face of collapse, I'm back at the bottom of 50, in the face of collapse and despair, in the face of the total failure of their human resources, they found, these are promises, they found that a new power, peace, happiness, and sense of direction flowed into them. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. And then it describes our state, which it's going to describe more fully on page 52, the bedevilments. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. You know, you hear people in a meeting say, my problem was not being drunk. My problem is being sober. You know, you'll hear people say eventually, when I came in here because I thought my drinking was a problem. After a little while, I discovered that it's actually my solution. It's not my problem. And then after a little more participation, at least I realized my problem is not alcohol. My problem is God. I'm having trouble with God. I've got some resentments toward God or whatever, or I don't feel like I have any relationship with God, or I have a lot of doubt about the whole God thing. So they show how the change came over them. And then this is a second level of miracle that happens inside Alcoholics Anonymous, not to everybody. And so it becomes a really good waypoint for you to ask yourself, and I'll talk about how you can do that. When many hundreds of people, remember this is way back there were actually only 100 people when they wrote this thing. When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. And what my sponsor made me do was write down important facts of my life. And I got a lot of important facts about my life. You know, then he asked me to order them. Well, what do you consider the most important facts of your life? And then he said, where does your relationship with God fit on this list? And when I placed it on the list, then he said, well, if you want to use the power of prayer, you can pray. You can look at this list morning or night and ask God to help you move something that's above the line that says better relationship with God or relationship with God. Move it to below that line and see what happens. And I can say to you today, without blinking my eyes, my relationship with God is the single most important fact of my life. I let a lot of things get in the way of it. I don't always attend to it as much as I would like, but I try to do the stuff that we do. And I can say, I couldn't have said this. I probably couldn't have said this 2 years ago. This is something that's come to me recently, and I had to go through a dreadful, dark mental period to get to where I feel I am today. But the important thing also is the most remarkable thing to me about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and these steps in this program is there is no limitation to the upside. I'm an old man, and yet I can tell you I feel better about my life today than I have ever felt. Ever felt. I got lots of aches and pains. I got lots of doubts and fears, but I feel more enthusiastic about my life, and I feel better about my life than I've ever felt. And it is only because of Alcoholics Anonymous and the relationship that I feel I have with my creator. I like to use the word my creator because it reminds me I did not create myself. I can create things, and I can make a difference in my physical body and my mental mind. I can decide certain things, do certain things. I can decide what to eat. And once it's passed out of my mouth, I have no idea. I have no idea and no control over how my body processes the only decision I get to make is what am I going to put in my mouth? Beyond that, I have not a clue. I don't know how my body heals a broken bone or heals a cut on my skin. But I'm going to tell you, I can create things, and I can anyway. But when you get to my soul, the third aspect of the human experience, body, mind, and spirit, or body, mind, and soul, that's so far out of my pay league that's how you say it? So far out of my pay grade or whatever. I have no idea. I have no idea how my soul came into existence. I have some idea, courtesy of some books, in particular a book called Journey of Souls that I can get you the title and the author if you'd like, that where this hypnotherapist, he kept having people flip into a soul consciousness, and after 20 years, he started cataloging the similarities. And it's like, I believe it. It just rings true for me that my soul has experienced many, many human lives. Why it's here for this particular life, I am not sure. And I think for me, that's the hardest step 11. God, why am I here? I know my body and my mind have a start date and they have a stop date. They're going to stop. I believe my soul was here before my body was in existence, before my body was born. That's what this book says, talks about it. And it will survive my death. And it's dramatically reduced my level of fear. In fact, I'll talk about that more later. But in any event, I know I did not create my soul. And what is beneficial to me about that is then I feel an obligation to my creator to live to its purpose for my life. And that's way different. I mean, I've spent a lifetime trying to live a designer life, trying to decide what I want to be a happy camper, and then make it happen. And the problem was every time I made it happen, my human ego personality was not satisfied. It'd say, yeah, I know I told you I wanted that. Now I need this. Now this needs to be different. And then I promise you we're going to be happy. And I had a moment sober where I was looking forward to a boat trip I was going to take by myself in a beautiful part of the world. And I kept telling myself how happy I was going to be when I got on the boat and didn't have to worry about the world. And I was so miserable being with me, sober, so miserable being with me. It was like, why do I keep believing my own mind? Why will I say to you, I do not trust God, but I do trust my own thinking? Explain that to me. I don't know why. I don't that and to geez, I'm jumping around here, but the reading number, let's see, which one is it? Oh yeah, the last reading. Robin did it. This for me is the silver bullet of the whole deal. If I will humbly rely on God, and if I will behave the way I think God wants me to behave, I will be enabled. I will get the power. Lack of power is my dilemma. I can think it, but I can't make it happen. I can want to have a serene, peaceful, useful, happy life, and I can't make it happen. This is saying just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and I behave the way I think God wants me to behave, I will be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right smack dab in the middle of the human calamity. The book never promises us that the calamity will ever change. The calamity has never changed in my 77 years. There's always calamity going on, whether it's in my personal life or it's in a broader societal life. What it says is, I will be enabled to meet the calamity, observe the calamity with the serenity that at least I'm doing my part to be, to fulfill my higher power, my creator's purpose for my life. That's huge, at least for a guy like me. That is huge. To be out from under the tyranny of a human personality demanding. I mean, I've been so demanding of my life and of the people in my life. My happiness depends on your behavior. So you got to shape up here and start being different, or I can't be happy. And I'm sorry to say, my happiness is the only thing that's really important to me. At least that's where I was at. To be out from the under the tyranny of that, and to have my relationship with God be the most important fact of my life, that is a frickin' miracle. At least for me. But wait, there's more. That's a wonderful thing, but there's more. So, and I just before moving on, I just want to point out that this statement on page 51, the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of my life. I just lost it. It was a good thought too, and I just went. Oh yeah, relationship. You turn one page, you turn to page 52. The very first of the bedevilments, we were having trouble with personal relationships. I have yet to meet a person coming into AA that, I don't have any problem with personal relationships. They're all wonderful. You know, that's, at least I haven't met him yet. We have trouble with relationship, period. I am so self-obsessed, self-centered, and fundamentally selfish that I'm not interested in relationship. I'm interested in getting what I want. And the idea of relationship has become, has created a huge change. You know, I was into unilateral relationships on my terms. I've never been good at them. And I'm convinced personally that resentment is the number one offender. The reason I have trouble with relationships is because I am powerless over my resentful mind. I cannot stop my mind from being annoyed with your behavior. I always have an idea of how I want you to be, and when you're not the person I want you to be, I get annoyed. And then I figure the best thing to do is get angry. The biggest lesson about resentment for me is that it's not about anger. It's actually about fear. It just took me a lot of work to get to the fear. And the fear always centered around my ambitions not being fulfilled, my ambitions for what I wanted to happen in the relationship or in the moment that I'm in. That's the third column. I am resentful at whoever. The reason they're not being the person I want them to be. How does it affect my pride, my self-esteem, my ambitions? That's what it was for me, is for me. I have ambitions about how I want something to go, and when they're thwarted, I get angry because I'm frightened that my ambitions won't come to pass. And I'll have to be miserable. And I'll have to be alone with me. I don't know. Okay. So now we're talking about, and this was all introduction. I mean, golly. So the third level of miracle shows up in the fifth step promises. And the fifth step promises are on page 75. So if you got a book and you want to see where this is, okay, so in the middle of this page, they're talking about the promises of doing this fifth step. And it says, we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. That's the first promise. I'm going to be delighted. Withholding, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. That's a huge promise for me. I don't have to look away. I can look at somebody in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. I've never been good being alone. You know, I don't know whether I wanted somebody else to share my misery or what, but I couldn't be alone. Our fears fall from us. We are experiencing less fear. Wonderful promises. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We begin to feel the presence of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. Now, instead of just theorizing about God or my Creator or higher power, I begin to actually experience it, which brings with it a level of conviction that I haven't had before when I'm just in my mind. So let's see. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. Well, that's the first level of miracle. You know, the problem has been removed. All of a sudden, alcohol is not my problem. But here's the next level. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Now, that's a whole different deal. You know, this was written before interstates existed. And most broad highways had lots of stoplights and congestion and everything else. Interstates are probably as close as we're going to get to a broad highway, but they're really going somewhere without an obstruction. So the idea that I'm on a broad highway, walking hand in hand, walking in partnership, walking in relationship with a big sibling or parent or whatever you like, or just friend or whatever, walking hand in hand, that's a whole other level to me, a whole other level of miracle. And when we feel this, our lives can really start to take off, I believe, in terms of our feeling meaning and usefulness to our lives. And I just want to refer back to page, if you've got your book, go back to page 56, and I'll just read you this experience that this is Fitz Mayo, who's also our Southern friend. And he's just, well, one night when confined in a hospital, page 56, he was approached by an alcoholic who'd known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose bitterly as he cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the people, let's see, wait a minute, I just lost my place. Is it possible that all the religious people I've known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood, get this, he stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore for the first time. Companionship with his creator. So that's what this third level. It's not just that God is my relationship with God is the most important fact of my life. It's that I I feel like I'm walking hand in hand. I feel like I am living in relationship with my creator. So that's the third level, and um, and uh, I feel I've had a spiritual awakening. I feel I have a relationship with God, although it's funny, I can tell you I have a relationship with God, and that's about all I can say. I can't explain it. I don't understand it. I can tell you results of it, but it's like I know I have a relationship with God, and I don't know what else to say about it. Um, and that's a miracle in a certain way. So. Uh, so what I want to do is go back through these three aspects of our disease and touch on these different things that we're trying to do and relate it to these levels of miracle. So, and I just want to add, so Robin will know, Robin and I have been reading a lot of Jesuit material, and one of these books is called Experiencing God, 3 Levels of Prayer. And I don't know what happened. Okay, there we are. That's the second time, isn't it? Um, So in this book, this guy talks about three different levels of experiencing God. And the first level is as we move from the head to the heart. And it's we move from a belief in God, a mental belief in God, to a heartfelt experience of God. And usually this shows up for us as gratitude. Instead of being annoyed by the stuff of our life, we actually feel grateful for the stuff, grateful just to be here. Um, and the second level he calls love of the heart. Um, and that's in the heart where I'm just experiencing my love for God, God's love for me, and my love for, they're Jesuits, so they're going to call it your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself, um, because your neighbor is part of God, just like you are. Um, but the third level, he he describes. I'm still working on this stuff as I allow God to work on me. I allow. We say it in the second step. We say, we come to believe in this higher power and believe that this higher power can restore us to sanity. That means heal. Sane means healthy. An aspect of sanity is health, healthy responses to our life, instead of insane responses to our life, which we define as resentful, frightened, or remorseful. Um, so I don't want to lose it. Um, so in this third stage of prayer, we are inviting, allowing, encouraging higher power to build with us. Excuse me. To build with us and do with us as God will. We say it in the third step prayer. I don't think we mean it. And when we get to levels of the third step decision, that's going to be, I've identified 5 different levels that I've experienced that which are really just going through the steps. The first level is, I'm going to do this work. I'm going to proceed to step 4 and see what happens. I'm going to try to get to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to try to get to conscious contact. I'm going to try to get to living 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. But and all I can say now is I'm going to proceed with 4 through 9. That's the first level. And I think it changes as we start to feel these different miracles taking place. We get more and more serious about it. And George, who's not on here this morning, he likes to say 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. That's the starting line. That's when we start doing this thing. We're doing 1 and 2 and 3, making a decision, and then going into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's just to get us to the starting line. The real starting line of this thing is 10, 11, and 12 all the time. That's quite something. For me, that's walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. So I'm just going to run back through these. Physical aspect. Silkworth calls it an allergy. I like to say I can't drink safely. Symptom, the phenomenon of craving. I know what you mean when you talk about the phenomenon of craving. If I have one drink, I've got to have another. I understand that. Treatment, abstinence. That's all we got. Promises of treatment, no physical things, no headaches, hangovers, handcuffs, no lost cars, no busted relationships, no whatever. None of the physical stuff happens to us. And I'm saying that's the first level of miracle. We feel like the major problem of our life, which is our relationship with alcohol, has been removed. It's no longer tyrannizing my life. Mental part, we're calling recovery. The physical part, unity, refers to the meetings of the fellowship. Mental part, recovery. This is our one-on-one work with another alcoholic in the steps as they're written in the book. Name, my favorite is strange mental blank spot, because my life looked pretty damn good in everything except with regard to my relationship with alcohol. I'm a high bottom drunk. I didn't get into big trouble in the ways that often we do. But boy, if I could, I would hold up my inner misery. I would say I was just as miserable as anybody, even though I was a high. So my mental part is strange mental blank spot. I had a pretty good life around everything except when it came to alcohol. Symptom. Well, this one's interesting. The symptom is on page 24, where it describes in italics, it describes the mental blank spot as we're unable to recall with sufficient force the memory of what happened the last time we took the first drink. And it says there is a complete failure of the type of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. I have touched a hot stove, never did it a second time. I got burned by alcohol thousands of times. My mind needed the relief that alcohol gave me so bad that it would not allow me to see the result. I always started drinking. I'm going to stop at 3. 3 gets me where I want to get. I'm going to stop at 3 and enjoy the evening or whatever. And then I wake up the next morning hungover. And I don't want to drink. And my mind says, that's good. You don't want to drink. About 4 o'clock, little voice, hey, feeling better? I think maybe we could have a drink. I think we'd feel better if we have a drink. I couldn't, he says a week or a month ago, I couldn't go 8 hours. I don't want to drink for 8 hours. And then all of a sudden it seems like a good idea. The failure of the hot stove defense. Treatment. Well, that's 4 through 9. That's doing steps 4 through 9. And the promises of treatment are the 4th through 9th step promises. And what relating it to this part, the ultimate outcome is I realize that my relationship with God is the most important fact of my life. Spiritual aspect of the disease, we're putting in service there. That's the 3 sides of the triangle, by the way, that are inside this huge circle of prayer and meditation. Without prayer and meditation, the 3 sides of the triangle don't mean diddly. Without that circle, any rate, name whatever you want. Spiritual malady. How about agnosticism? My sponsor taught me every time I saw the word alcoholic, I could substitute agnostic and the sentence would make sense to me. My problem is not my alcoholism. That's my solution. My problem is my agnosticism. My problem is my lack of a relationship with God. That's my problem. Symptom. Well, this is huge. What's my symptom? And this is where I think the book is as brilliant as the book's going to get. What's the symptom of my inability to have a relationship with God? It's a 4-letter word that starts with F, and it's fear. Fear tells me I don't have a relationship with God. All I've got is my self-reliance. All I've got is my brain, my human brain running on patterns it's been running on since it was born. And I trust those patterns and believe in those patterns. So now I remember what I was trying to say a half an hour ago. I hope I'll remember. Humbly rely, but the problem is humble. And the way humble shows up is lack of trust. So at any rate, so fear is telling me that I'm living under the tyranny of my self-reliance. I really don't have a choice. I can't go to God about whatever, ask for guidance about whatever it is, because I don't have God in my life. I love little catchy phrases like pause, ask, listen, do equals serenity. That's one of them. Quit playing God. First of all, quit playing God. Invite God in. Do as directed. That's 3 words that say this whole deal. I got to quit playing God. I got to quit living on my self-reliance, believing my own thinking, and acting on my own thinking. I have to invite God in. And then I have to do as I'm directed to do. I'm going over times, but what I'm trying to say, so name, I'm agnostic, symptom, fear, treatment plan, 10, 11, and 12, all the frickin' time. Promises of treatment, the 10-step promises, the 11-step promises, the 12-step promises. In this interpretation of the big book, everything after into action, which has into action has steps 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11. The whole rest of the book is about step 12. The whole rest of the book, almost 40% or something, I don't know. So, and the outcome is serenity. Serenity is not a goal. I will be enabled to experience serenity when I am humbly relying on God and when I am behaving the way I think God wants me to behave. And it takes the work of the steps to get there. So over time, I'm going to stop this recording and we'll have some open discussion. So pause, stop, boom. Bye, or see you soon.